Hello everyone and welcome back to the CDL podcast channel. In this one today, you know what is going to go on. We are going to be doing our reactions, going over the matches from the past weekend, kind of a crazy weekend of COD, as well as diving into our predictions for these upcoming matches that begin tomorrow, and talk about some of the crazy roster news. I mean, we had Paul X we saw play for London, so that's not really like a brand new roster change, but we have overall like 4 teams that have made pretty significant changes, bringing in 4 challengers players. So we are going to go over that, kind of look at the outlook for those rosters, as well as do our weekly power rankings following the matches, and then maybe a little bit of news, although there isn't like a whole ton of news besides the roster changes. But yeah, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the episode. We're on the road to 300 subscribers. The support on the channel has been awesome lately, so I'd really appreciate if we could keep it going. I mean, it's been awesome recently. The community's been growing. We've got a lot of new commenters on each video and stuff, which is kind of cool to see. I love talking to all you guys. Obviously, we have some pretty consistent commenters always, and those conversations are awesome as well. But obviously, the more the merrier, and we can get discussions going between each other and stuff, and that's the kind of stuff I like to see. I like those discussions that happen down in the comments and stuff, because, I mean, that's what I created this channel for, like I said, just to talk some COD with everyone. So without further ado, we'll just get right into the podcast. First, we're going to start with some reactions to the matches and some thoughts on like some team outlooks, and then we'll talk roster news following that. So I'm just going to pull up the matches here and kind of go over. I'm not going to like go in depth into each one, but some of the more key ones I may talk a little bit more about. And we can go a little bit more just like match by match for this, because obviously it's not like the major where there's like 1,000 matches to go over, or the Super Week where there's so many matches to go over that we got to go team by team. But looking at my my points leaderboard, I actually am in like the top 20 of all the people that picked, because I got 26 points. I got every single match correct except 2, and I mean there was what 2, 4, 7, 10 matches this past week. I got 8 of them correct, and of the 8 I got correct, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the map counts exactly right. And then the other 3 I got the winner right, but the map count wrong. But yeah, we're just gonna dive into the matches. One of the first matches of the week was Atlanta Faze versus NYSL. I got that one right. It was a 3-1 Atlanta Faze. NYSL looked okay in this match. I mean, like nothing crazy. They could have won a couple maps probably here and there. That first hardpoint on Garrison, it looked like for a second it was like 190. It was like around 190 to 180. I believe they were up, or they were down. They're right in there. It was like around 180. It was tied. And I actually thought that New York had a super good chance to win it. And then going back towards like the P5 hill, I think they got spawned out in the back, and then they were just kind of getting spawn killed. And then they lost the rotation over to P1, and it ended on P1, I believe. But they didn't play it bad. I mean, Faze is one of the scariest hardpoint teams that are out there, obviously, just because of the raw sheer talent they have in their subs. And I mean, when you're looking and saying, wow, their subs are super talented, God, their flex is so talented, and the one guy you're leaving out and saying, oh man, it's Arcitys, he's hella talented. So when you're kind of leaving him out and forgetting about him as the 4th man, I mean, their team, they're just insane. So to put up 200 in hardpoint against them isn't bad. And then New York won that next search on Express 6-5. And then the control, they lost 3-1, and then that last hardpoint, 250 to 195 on Apocalypse. I mean, they held their own and stuff. I would say, like, overall, in terms of outlook, obviously Faze, every time you win, especially when you're undefeated, it's like, okay, we're real good, we're fine. But for New York, I mean, obviously they lose the hardpoints each about 250 to 200 roughly, and then they win the search 6-5 and lose the control 3-1. But for New York, I would say it's actually a little bit of a positive outlook, because it was their first game in the new meta, and Clay played like horrible, like probably his worst series of the year. He was 70 and 98 overall, 0.71. Mac did not play well. He was in a 0.7. Diamond Khan didn't play well. He was at a 0.7. And Asim played extremely well, like he always has. He had a 1.1. But, I mean, if you look at the other side, everybody on Faze basically had a 1.3, and Arcitys had a 1. So, like, New York, Clay had his worst series of the year. Diamond and Mac both played awful, and they still were able to be competitive in the series. So, honestly, that's probably like a good outlook for them overall. The fact that they could have Clay, Mac, and Diamond play horrible and actually not lose the series that bad. I mean, obviously super good for Atlanta. You're not going to complain about a win, but New York, it doesn't look as bad as it might seem, because they held their own when they weren't even playing that well. Then the next one, kind of a surprising match. This is one of the 2 that I got wrong on the weekend. It was Florida Mutineers versus Seattle Surge, and Seattle out of nowhere came out and looked really good, and it was really awesome to see because Prestinni dropped like a 1.2 in the series. He looked awesome. Looney was playing pretty well. Gunless was playing well. Octane, they were firing on all cylinders, and it wasn't against like some slouch of a team. It's not like Florida is not talented. They're a good team, and Seattle came out and punched them in the mouth under almost 100-point, clubbed them on Apocalypse. Then they won the search. They got destroyed in the control, and then they won that last checkmate hardpoint. I mean, they were awesome in that series. Like, I believe, like, what was it, overall on the entire series? Yeah, Prestinni had a 1.1, almost a 1.2 on the series. Gunless was around a 1.1, Octane had a 1.2, and then Looney, kind of more of an OBJ guy, had like a 0.9. I mean, overall, Seattle looked really good, and they continued it later on in the week. I mean, for Florida, it'd be slightly more concerning if they didn't get a win later in the week. Obviously, it was against a team that was kind of in shambles. But I was really impressed with Seattle here. I mean, they showed a sign of life, and it's going to reflect maybe my power rankings later and stuff. And I'm excited because, like, when was the last time? I mean, probably you couldn't say that you were really excited about Seattle's team. I mean, the only time anybody ever talked excited about Seattle's team was in the preseason before Modern Warfare. People were thinking they might be a good team, and then in the preseason before this year, people were thinking they might be a good team. But ever since the matches actually started in both years, it's been like, well, Seattle's a bottom 3 team again, or Seattle's the worst team. But now, I mean, there's no guarantee that there's some amazing team, but they may be working their way towards the middle of the pack and starting to become a competitive team, as we saw in this weekend. So that was really exciting to see. And then the next day, we move on. We had LA Thieves versus Toronto Ultra. This was probably one of the most fun series to watch this entire year, I would say, so far. It was awesome. It was a 3-2. Insight in that map 5 was going absolutely crazy in the search and destroy. I think he dropped 18 it was. He played really well overall in the series. That was pretty impressive from him. But at the same time, they lose, and I mean, that was basically that map 5, watching that search. Obviously, Miami's kind of like just weird and random with how many lines of sight there are and stuff, but that was literally just like watching two teams trying to lose. They were both just like, you know what? No, Toronto, we want you to have the win in Insight's debut. And they're like, no, you know what? We want your roster to stay together. You guys can have the win. They were just like trying to give each other the win. It was such sloppy COD, but sometimes that makes for the most fun to watch because like it's just so chaotic, and it's just like there's a lot of hype moments because people are popping a lot of 3 pieces. And when somebody's dropping 18 in a search and destroy, it's going to be a pretty fun map to watch because it's just something you don't see all the time. But Insight played really well in the series. Kleenex also played really well. Cammy was all right, and the typical suspect Bance played pretty poorly. And then on the LA Thieves side, I mean, Slasher and TJ were pretty good like they have been all year. And Kenny and Temp both struggled a little bit, kind of flopping their roles, which could have an issue. We'll talk about that a little bit when we talk about the Temp roster change. But I believe that role switch, putting Temp on the flex and Kenny on the sub, I believe that's where they both belong. And I tweeted something about that. I'm like, hey, I think 100 Thieves, this could be good for them because I think they both belong there. I just think that it was probably such a short turnaround that they got used to using their new gun, and they both struggled in it. But yeah, it was impressive from some individual play on Toronto's side, but the team play-wise was just horrible on both. And I would like to say, like, you know, the team organization would probably been better with Methods because it would have been. But at the same time, I don't know if Methods is dropping 18 in that final search because, I mean, that was just an unreal game from Insight. But they might have not got to that situation if they were a little more structured. But overall, kind of a negative outlook for both teams, and that's why one of them made a roster change. And then the next match, I picked this one correct as well, just like the LA Thieves Ultra one. I picked 3-2 Thieves over Ultra, so I got that one exactly right. But then the Paris one, I picked 3-2 Paris, and it was a hot 3-0. I mean, Paris looked awesome in that match, and that's really like, at this point, like some of you, I'm sure are surprised, but that shouldn't be surprised anymore. We now know at this point that Paris is a very good team. Like they have so much potential. They kind of swapped the roles again with the new meta. They put Scraps in the flex. And then Fire was using more of a sub where he should be. And overall, I mean, they just fried this series. I mean, everybody in Minnesota got destroyed. We had Aqua at a 1.5. Classic was at a 1. Fire was at like a 1.2. Scraps at a 1.1. But when you pull up stats, like I just pulled up the stats for this match because I wanted to look at something on the Minnesota side. But when you pull up a match and you see that a team won 3-0, and one of their players was 35-35 for the entire series, that being Classic, you know that they fried. Classic literally had 6k damage on the entire series and went 35-35, and they 3-0'd. Like, Classic was literally just walking around the map, not really carrying, and they were just frying. I mean, Paris looks extremely good. Obviously, they lose later in the week in their next match to Optic, but they look very good, and once again, I believe they're a very good team. I think they have potential to be like a top middle of the pack team. But at the same time, you also don't want to overreact and be like, oh my god, Paris is a bunch of gods, because they were playing Minnesota, who seems to be chalked. But I will say this meta shift seemed to benefit them, at least slightly, and I was overall pretty impressed with their play, and I'm looking forward to seeing them more. In Minnesota, obviously, we won't see this current roster again, but such a disappointment. Such a disappointment. They have so much talent, and they just couldn't make it work at all. And then in the next day we go into, the first match of the day was Paris versus Optic. Optic obviously wins this one 3-1. Not a horrible showing from Paris overall, though. I mean, the first hardpoint, they put up like 184. Then they win the search and destroy on Express. Got pretty much handled in the control 3-0. And then the last Apocalypse hardpoint was very close, but they fall. I mean, I think we all know Optic is a more talented team. They are the better team than Paris. I mean, Paris is a good team, but I mean, if they're playing Optic, we're still picking Optic every time over them. But I mean, they put up a good showing overall. I mean, like Envoy destroyed in this series. He had like a 1.2, and so did Formal. And Dashy had like a 1.1. Overall, I mean, Paris got outslayed pretty heavily, but I feel like we should expect that. I mean, Optic is, in general, going to outslay pretty much any team they play, except for maybe like Atlanta and maybe even Dallas. But I feel like they'll outslay Dallas most times just because of talent. But they're going to pretty much outslay any team in the league just because of their raw talent. But Paris honestly put up a pretty good fight. Once again, they lose, so it's disappointing. But I will say that I'm still optimistic after this match because they played them tough. I think that they can beat almost any team they play on any given day. Obviously, I'm still going to favor like your Atlanta, your Dallas, your New York, and your Chicago. I'm going to favor them over Paris, but I think Paris can beat almost anybody on any given day. And yeah, I mean, overall, not the best showing from them because they do lose, but impressive series from Optic. It's like, for this is like a really neutral series to me. It's exactly what I expect. Paris plays them tough, but loses, and Optic handles them, and they get the win. I mean, it's exactly where I'd expect both teams. Not really too much to take away from this series here. And the next one is Florida, Minnesota, and however, there is a lot to take away from this series. I actually picked Minnesota to win this 3-2. I mean, if I was able to just like switch my predictions before the weekend, if I saw that Minnesota performance against Paris, I would have certainly switched to the Florida pick. But Florida wins this one. They handle them 3-0, pretty easy. Like, yikes, what a rough match. I mean, the takeaways for me are a huge win for Florida because they lose to Surge, and I mean, coming into their group, if they were going to finish top 2 to try to get into the winners bracket, if they were going to try to do that, you would expect that they were going to have to beat Surge, they were going to have to beat Minnesota, and they're going to have to beat Optic. Or not Optic, I'm sorry, Surge. What am I saying here? I was expecting Florida would have to beat Minnesota and Surge and probably Paris in order to win their group or come in second in their group, and then probably have to take out one of Dallas or Optic because you would expect that Dallas and Optic is pretty much going to beat everyone but each other maybe. So they're probably going to have to for sure beat Minnesota, Paris, and Seattle because those are like the 3 gimmies, and then you got to take out one of Optic or Dallas or both if you want to just ensure it. But they fall to Surge right away, so now they're basically in danger of for sure being in losers, so they need to get that win over Minnesota, and they do. They dominate them, and for Minnesota, I mean, even if the standee roster change comes out and is really awesome, I don't think it's going to matter in terms of their standings for the groups because I doubt Dallas or Optic, one of them is probably going to go 5-0, and then the other one's going to go 4-1 depending on who loses the match between them. So I don't see a way that anybody besides Dallas and Optic is in the top here, but Minnesota really screwed themselves over with standee either way because they lost to Paris and Florida. So now they have to beat Surge, Optic, and Empire in order to go 3-2, and 3-2 probably won't even get them in the top 2 in their bracket. But just a poor, pathetic performance in Minnesota. We'll talk about the roster change a little bit later. I mean, there's no excuse for a team with that level of talent to just be so horrible and just not be able to even remotely figure it out. It's just awful. And then the last match of Saturday, it was Empire Surge. I mean, this one, when going through my predictions, it was the first 3-0 on the entire weekend that I picked. And I was like, yeah, this is easy pick 3-0. And Surge came out and just said, you know what, shut up, because, you know, we're here to stay maybe. And they played extremely well. I mean, that first hard point, they got dominated, and it was like, this is what we expected. They got beat 250 to 135 on Moscow. And, I mean, that happens and we're like, yeah, this is what we expected. I mean, Dallas is clearly the better team over Surge. Surge sucks and whatever. And then all of a sudden, Dallas comes out and they win a round 11. It was like, okay, Seattle showed some life. Round 11 on checkmate. But we're like, okay, well, Dallas is like the best control team in the game. Whatever, here it comes. Surge are going to get beat on this, and it'll be over. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they come out. They win 3-2 in control, gunless fried. Huke had a really bad map, which is very rare this year. And then they come out in the map 4 hardpoint on raid and destroy them by 100 points. Octane fried, Looney even fried, gunless fried, and Prestinni was out of 1. I mean, they just overall dominated. And then they lose that search, heartbreaking round 11. Octane went off in that map, though, 14-7. And so did Crim, though, 15-8. They kind of went at each other. But, I mean, obviously, when you go to a round 11, game 5, I mean, anything can happen. It's just one round doesn't go your way. But they were literally one search round away from reverse sweeping Dallas, who we would say is maybe, even if you don't put them in your top 2, Dallas is for sure a top 3 team. And Surge was very close to taking them out, who we thought was the bottom of the pack. So, overall, like, for Dallas, it was the only match we saw. So, like, it was the only match in the new meta. You don't want to hit the panic button. But I would say it's, like, a slight worry if you're Dallas because illey just has not looked that good this year. I mean, we saw Huke be vulnerable for like one of the first times. shottzyy still seems to be struggling. Crim played well overall. I mean, you're never going to be that worried about Crim. I mean, Crim on the main isn't as good as Crim on the flex, in my opinion. But, I mean, it's Crimsix. You're really not going to be that worried about him. I mean, he's always going to be, he's going to play well. I mean, it's Crim. He's the GOAT for a reason. He's going to play well. And I assume shottzyy, Huke, and illey are all going to come around. I mean, Huke has already been around. He's one of the best players in the game this year. But, like, in terms of shottzyy and illey, I mean, they're going to come around and at least be decent. But I'm a little worried that it's taking this long for them to really step into their role. And, I mean, with that said, Dallas was still in the grand final of the first tournament. They still won this match. They still went, like, what, 4-1 in groups. In the first group, made the grand final. They're undefeated in this group so far. I want to know, like, it's not like Dallas is some bad team, but I will say in terms of their potential to maybe be the best team and maybe win tournaments, I'm a little bit worried because Chicago seems to be hitting form a little bit better in their one match we saw. They seem to like really like the meta, and Atlanta is obviously in form. New York seems pretty well. I'm scared with the LA Thieves roster change. They could be better. I mean, a lot of teams are making roster changes to get better. Paris is on the upswing, and I feel like Dallas is kind of just like stagnant where they are right now. I do feel like they certainly could get better, and would I be shocked if Dallas becomes better and is the best team in the game for the rest of the year? Not at all, because that's the kind of talent they have, and that's what a Crimsix team usually does. But I'm like a slight bit worried that shottzyy and illey are maybe just, this isn't their game. They're only going to be like good players and not great. But once again, I wouldn't be shocked if in 2 weeks shottzyy and illey are the 2 best players in the game because that's the talent they have. Then the last day of the weekend, we had LAG versus London. I actually predicted London to win this one. I did 3-2 in my predictions. Obviously, it was a hot 3-0, which was surprising to me because obviously London hasn't won a match yet up to that point. But Zed played awesome in the series. Paul was okay. He had like a round of 1, but it was his first series. Probably some nerves there. Shawnee played really good with a 1.2. And Dylan finally actually played better. He had like a 1.02 or something like that. Yeah, 54 and 53 for Dylan. He actually played very well, which is good to see because, like I said, coming into this year, I thought one of the keys for London as a team was to open up the map for Dylan and let him be a superstar. And, I mean, up to this point this year, he hadn't been a superstar at all. And he finally like showed signs that he could maybe be a good player this year. But, I mean, they beat LAG in that first hardpoint 250 to 189, then 6-2 in the search and 3-0 in the control. They honestly pretty much dominated them. And I don't want to, like, once again, this is why I just hate picking LAG, because to me, they can lose to any team. That's why I picked them to lose to London. But for London, I also don't want to overreact and be like, oh my God, London 3-0, they smoked them. I mean, it was LAG they beat, probably one of the lower skill ceiling teams in the league. But at the same time, I also want to say, hey, you know what? It is their first win. They got a talented guy like Paul Hecz. Zed looked very good. The team seemed to be gelling. Dylan started to play better. So I would say, like, London is certainly on the upswing. I think they have potential to do something. I really don't think that they have potential to get all that much higher than like bottom middle of the pack. But I will say London, a little bit of an uptick. Then the next match, probably one of the best clinics of just absolute domination we've seen this entire season. Probably, I would say. Probably one of the best clinics of just like thorough domination. It was Faze versus Toronto. I mean, they absolutely dominated them. Then that like third control round on raid in the control map, Abizi like legged out or whatever, his game crashed. Then they had to wait, do the replay, and then they just like beat him in the fastest control round in like 15 seconds we've ever seen. Just completely, those are teams that was like a pro team playing a team of 4 guys that went on and signed on to league play. And I will say Atlanta is obviously at another level right now, but when Atlanta and Toronto played earlier in the year in Stage 1, I believe Atlanta won 3-1, but the maps were very close, and then it looked like Atlanta just was running all over the map and knew exactly what they were doing, and I will say that probably has something to do with missing your IGL and methods on Toronto. That's why, like, one guy, if any of you ever watch Enable, he always talks about how talent and KD is and everything, and this is the obvious case where it is. Like, did Insight overall on the weekend have a pretty good KD? Yes. But guess what he finished at? He finished at a 1.05. Methods had a 1.04 in the year. They're roughly the same. And I don't know a ton about Insight in game, but Methods has been around for a lot longer. I'm going to assume that Methods is probably the better IGL, and Toronto overall just looked lost on the map. Despite their talent level really not changing, and I bet you many of you would argue that Insight is more talented than Methods. So I mean, Bance stayed the same, CleanX, Cammy, they all stayed the same, and then if they subbed in Insight with more talent, you would think they should do better against Faze, but no, they looked like me and my 3 friends hopping on league play just to casually play, and then we ran into Atlanta Faze and got dominated. That's what Toronto looked like. It was actually embarrassing, and I would say that might have something to do with Methods. I mean, you're missing the IGL. Now, I'm not saying, I mean, if Methods was in that series, Atlanta Faze could have still probably 3-0'd, but I'd say it would have been maybe closer maps. They would have at least looked a little more structure on the map, unlike that Control where they literally looked like they had never played Control before. Atlanta dominated them so bad, but just horrible showing out of Toronto, and Faze just, I mean, what else can you say about Faze? They obviously are the clear-cut best team in the game right now. They haven't lost a series yet, and I don't know if that's going to happen anytime soon. Then in the last match of the weekend, another awesome match, LA Thieves versus New York Subliners. The Thieves get out to a quick 2-0 lead in the series. Subliners look kind of down. They look kind of beaten out. And then out of nowhere, they roar back, win 3 straight. Temp really, really struggled in those last 3 maps. Probably the reason, like, the final nail in the coffin to get him dropped. But I picked this one right exactly, too. It was 3-2 Subliners. I picked the 3-2 Subliners. It was a big win for the Subliners as well, and I believe it was a big win for guys like Diamond and Mac because, I mean, they lose to Atlanta. Obviously, that isn't like a bad loss or anything, but they lose to them. And then if they would have been swept by LA Thieves or something, I don't know. With Hydra just sitting there now in America, they might have been like, screw it, we're 0-2. It's time to make that roster change, and they would have probably dropped Diamond or Mac. But they have a crazy reverse sweep. They look awesome. Everybody kind of steps up. Clay played out of his mind. He was awesome. And then they get the reverse sweep, and now it's like, okay, everything's good. We beat one of the top teams in our side of the brackets. Now we're looking pretty. Faze kind of has the, or not Faze, I'm sorry. Subliners kind of has the inside track to make the top 2 now over LA Thieves since they beat them head-to-head. Although LA Thieves beat Toronto, but I expect New York to beat Toronto or whatever. So, I mean, the fact that New York's 1-1 and has already played Faze, and LA Thieves is 1-1 and hasn't played Faze, I feel like that bodes well for New York as long as they can just take out the other teams in their group. They should have the inside track to make top 2 and then be in the winners of stage 2. So that is, I mean, pretty good for New York. I feel like they're going to stick with the roster now. I thought if they lost that match, they might be also making a roster change. But they don't, and I believe this is the final nail in the coffin for Temp. But that is all of the matches we had this past weekend. Kind of a long reaction to them and stuff, but there was a lot that happened and a lot of stuff that led to roster changes and stuff. But now that we're done with the matches, I kind of want to talk about some quick roster news stuff. This is probably going to be a pretty long episode since we still have to do predictions for the matches after this, so I'm not going to get into too much other like overall CDL news. But I'm going to do probably quick the roster changes, then we'll hop into power rankings, and then we'll do the predictions, and that'll probably be it for this episode. Because we're kind of doing the 2-in-1 here, because with the way the CDL is structured this year, it's a little easier. But the first roster news we'll talk about is kind of like the big one for me, since it's the biggest org probably, to make a change. It was Temp getting dropped for Venom. This is just crazy to me because it feels like that LA Thieves roster could have worked. Like if they would have started the year and allowed Temp to be on the flex, Slasher on the main, and then Kenny and TJ on the subs, I just feel like they could have worked. I mean, nobody can deny they definitely had the talent to be a top team. I mean, Kenny, TJ, Slasher, and Temp is one of the most talented rosters in the league by far. It's just crazy that they couldn't make it work. I just feel like the role switch did Temp in. I feel like he should have been a flex the whole year, and then they just randomly switched him. The meta shifted, and I feel like he just really struggled in those final 3 maps versus New York. Probably wasn't comfortable in his role yet. And obviously, like we've heard a million times, the comms weren't there as they said. And now Slasher and Temp have split up like 3 times. They split up after AW, and then they split up after World War II, or in the middle of World War II, and now they split up again. I mean, they were probably just done as teammates. But I also feel at the same time that, like, think Temp might have been doomed, like doomed from the start in a way with this team, because I'm pretty sure, like I've heard and stuff on like certain podcasts and stuff like that, that LA Thieves wanted Priesta, and then they would have gone with Slasher on the main, Priesta on the flex, and they would have had Kenny and TJ on the subs. But I think Priesta, I heard that he chose Minnesota because LA Thieves was going through the whole switch in orgs. They were obviously LA Optic, and the whole sale was going through, and when the sale was going through, I don't believe they could sign a fourth and stuff, so Priesta just wanted the stability and like the sure thing, and when he got the offer from Minnesota, he went there. And then LA Thieves was like, shoot, who we pick up? Well, Temp's still out there. He's super talented. He has a history with Slasher and stuff, so why not pick him up? And I feel like he kind of was just like somebody they didn't want, but somebody they kind of had to have. So they were unable to sign the fourth they wanted, and I feel like Temp kind of got thrown in there. It was kind of doomed if they ever struggled. He was kind of the next man out. But I do think if Venom can play like a good entry sub and open up the map, allowing Kenny to be more of like the main slayer like he was in World War II, I think that they could be really good. And let's see if TJ can actually be a good flex. If TJ is a good flex and Venom is actually as good as people say he is, like being like an entry sub, I think this team has potential to win events. They really don't have a good flex though is the issue, unless TJ can be that. Because like Kenny has tried to play the flex in the past. He was a Maddox in BO4, and then he started on the flex this year. He was playing like more of a flex role last year. But I've said forever that Kenny needs to be a sub. That's what we saw him at. Kenny's best game by far is still World War II, where he was arguably the best player in the game, and he was just a playmaker in that game with a sub. So I'm glad that they're keeping him on that. It'll be interesting to see TJ in the flex. I mean, TJ is a super talented player. I feel like he could do it, but he's going from entry sub to flex. Usually you see like the kind of slaying, like slower sub go to flex. But we'll see. We'll see if TJ can do that. If Venom is really good in the entry, though, I feel like that means Kenny's going to play well. And if those two are playing well in front of TJ, I feel like TJ's going to play well because he's got a lot of gun skill. And I mean, Slasher's always good. So I do feel like as long as Venom is as good as people say he is and can be a good entry sub and like just open up the map for TJ and Kenny, I think that LA Thieves has winning potential. And I'm pretty high on them until, I mean, we see otherwise. If they play super awful this week or something, then maybe I'll change my mind. But right now, I'm pretty high on them. The next roster change we'll talk about is Paulex in for Parasite. This one isn't as new because we've obviously seen a match with it, and it's small sample size and everything, so we don't want to overreact. But they did get the win, which is far better than anything they can say before. However, though, like the other new guy in the roster, I mean, he technically already played one match too, but Zed played awesome in that match, which is good to see. I kind of like Zed always. He's always been one of those like fringe league players, and I love that Reciprocity team in BO4. They were just really fun to watch. So I've always kind of been a Zed fan, so it's good to see him play well. And I believe that Paulex is arguably the best Challengers player. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. I don't keep up with Challengers as much as I should because I work for the College COD League and do stats and analytics there. So it's like, I mean, I'm spending a lot of time doing that and then also spending time watching the CDL to do this podcast. So I just don't have as much time to watch Challengers and stuff. But from what I heard, I believe Paulex is like one of the best, if not the best Challengers players so far this year. So, I mean, I love the pickup. I mean, if you're 0-6 this year and his ceiling is that high that he's potentially the best player in Challengers, why not take a shot at him? Because let's say you take a shot at him and he's really good and you treat him well, well, shoot, he might want to stick with your franchise, and then all of a sudden you got a franchise player on your hands. And you were 0-6 coming into the year, or coming into this match, so why not try something? Why not try a hot Challengers player out? I don't necessarily know that this means like, oh my God, London's on the uptick. They could be one of the best teams. I think they are going to be maybe more competitive. I still think they're probably towards the bottom right now until we see them prove it with consistency. But, I mean, it was good to see them win a match, and I hope that this makes them more competitive in future matches. And then the next one is Minnesota. Standy is in for Major Maniac. I might rant on this one a bit if you guys are all ready for that. But I will say, did their team need a change? Yes, there's no doubt about it. They certainly need a change. However, I do feel bad that Major Maniac is dropped, and I kind of feel that he got screwed in this situation. His subs in front of him are slower, and they're not like... I mean, Attach has always been a sub, but neither Priesta or Attach are really entries. They're kind of more like... I mean, Attach is more of like the slower slaying sub. He always had Zuma in front of him, and Priesta is maybe the slower sub, if not more naturally a flex. I mean, when I think of Priesta, I think flex. And then he also had a main AR behind him that was underperforming like crazy, and one of the worst in the entire league. I mean, I looked at the stats before I started this up, and accuracy had like a 0.98 KD on the AR this year, and that was, unless I was missing something and looking at it wrong, that was the worst in the entire league among ARs. And I mean, the players below him are like people that are like entry subs and stuff that I mean, are designed to probably have lower KDs because they're playing a lot harder role. But Accuracy had the lowest KD in the entire league for a main AR. I mean, behind guys like Shawnee, who you'd expect is usually like a walking 0.9. I mean, Shawnee's at a 1.01 this year. He's even higher than him. And then the only guy that's like lower above him, I mean, Skies is even above him, and he's been struggling like crazy this year. Like, Accuracy has been bad this year. Like, he has been nothing. He certainly hasn't even been very close to good. So I feel like Major Maniac never got comfortable. He had slower subs in front of him that weren't opening up the map as well, and then he had a bad main AR behind him. And I understand why they need their in-game leader or whatever with Arcitys, and like Accuracy and him are, or Accuracy and, I'm sorry, I said Arcitys. I understand why they need their in-game leader in Accuracy or whatever, and I know Accuracy is like Attach's best friend or whatever, but I would have dropped Accuracy. Like, if you have an issue with in-game leader, after you drop him, then maybe you can address it, bring him back, and like do something else. But like, the dude does not deserve a roster spot on that team over Major Maniac. I understand Major Maniac was also struggling, but Priesta, I mean, Accuracy had the worst KD in the league at main AR in 0.98. Priesta had a 0.85, and he's been playing awful. Admittedly, he even said he's been playing awful this year. Attach has been pretty good, and Major Maniac hasn't been that good this year either. But let's not pretend like Major Maniac couldn't play main AR. He was the main AR and arguably the best overall team last year. I mean, I know Atlanta Faze didn't win champs last year, but throughout the whole year, they were in like every single final on the year, and Major Maniac was the main AR for that team. So you're telling me you couldn't move Major Maniac to the main, Priesta to the flex, and then put Attach and Standy on subs? To me, that sounds better than having Accuracy on the main, but we'll see. I mean, they're probably going to get better because, I mean, they still have Attach and apparently Standy. I mean, I know he was on the winning team in Challengers last year with Nagafen and those guys. That's the only reason I follow him, is because I love Naga. He's one of my favorite players. So I assume this team's going to get better with Accuracy just because Standy's probably going to help them a lot because he fits the team better than having Major Maniac and Priesta and Accuracy on the same team. But man, I feel like they could be even better if they had Major Maniac on the main with those three players. I feel like he just got absolutely screwed. I don't understand how Accuracy keeps his roster spot. I feel like Accuracy is still living off his World War II hype. I mean, before World War II, nobody really knew much about him. He won a couple events with Faze or something, I believe, or like Faze Black. They won, I don't remember what it was. But he was kind of around before World War II and stuff. He was a young player. And then World War II, he obviously was an awesome player and has a great year. Then Black Ops 4, he started the year hot on Splice and then was dropped and was not good on EG. And then you go into Modern Warfare last year, they had one good event on New York, but overall they weren't that good. Now to start this year, they're not good again. It's like, I feel like he's just living off that hype and off Attach's friendship. I certainly think he's a main AR that should probably start in the league, but like at some point he's got to be held accountable for playing so poorly. Major Maniac just gets the short end of the stick. I hope he lands somewhere and gets to start soon again. And then going into our last roster move, it was Insight in for Methods, obviously, and now this one obviously is a little different than like the Venom and Standy one too, because we've also seen him play. He had an absolutely nuts first series versus LA Thieves individually, but once again it resulted in a loss. And don't get caught up in the flashy big numbers he put up. Like I like to say that Toronto did not have a main AR talent issue. They didn't have a main AR talent issue. That's not what it was. Methods was putting up the best numbers in their team and playing well. If you look at their KDs, they both had like exactly a 1.05. In his two matches that he played, Insight had a 1.05, and Methods overall had about a 1.05 on the year. So don't get caught up in this thing like it was a talent issue on the main AR. The issue has and always has been, or has and is still currently, it's still Bance. He's still the issue. He simply isn't good enough to be on this team. And Insight and Methods both put up like the same numbers, like I said, but nothing changed in the team. They're still 0-2 because Bance is getting destroyed on the map. Cammy's been pretty good this year. Kleenex has been pretty inconsistent, but he has his big maps and he has his bad maps. It's kind of what you expect from Kleenex as a player right now. He's a really boomer bust player. Sometimes he's going to have his bad maps, and then sometimes he's going to look like the best player in the game. But he's not bad. And Bance is just not a starter. I don't know if he's a starter in the league. There's a lot of guys out there that are sitting on benches, especially now, like Temp, Major Maniac, and those guys, like guys that are sitting on the bench, and even like some Challengers players, even like Fellow, and guys like Nagafen. People like that, like Hydra's sitting on the bench somewhere. Like, there's no way you can tell me that Bance is a starter in this league. I simply don't believe it. I mean, Zero is not currently starting in the league either, and that would knock Zed out if he didn't, and Zed's better than Bance. Like, he's just not a starter in the league. I'm sorry. This is a team that should have looked at a guy like Standy and Venom, and they should have just kept Methods in, kept Cammy in, kept Kleenex in, and then they should have picked up like a Standy or a Venom. Because if they had another aggressive sub to open up the map that was actually getting kills with Kleenex to help him slay, they'd be so good because that'd help Cammy out to look even better than he is, and Methods would stay. I don't know. If they had like a really good second sub to run with Kleenex that could actually slay, they would be so good. And I think Insight may play really well this year on the main AR because I do think he's a good player. But I just don't think it's going to matter that much because it's not like Methods was playing poorly, so you needed to switch. It's just like, I feel like it's just a really neutral kind of even switch. Like, they're both good players. Methods maybe, I'd say Methods is maybe more of a value as an in-game leader. Insight's maybe a little bit more talented because he's just younger and just has that fire and stuff. But like, overall, it's just like a 1-for-1 switch. I don't really see that much value in it. Then now onto the power rankings real quickly. We'll go 12 to 1. I know there's a lot of London Royal Ravens fans that listen and stuff. Don't kill me. I'm going to keep them at 12. But I will say, I have Toronto at 11 and LAG at 10 right in front of them. And Minnesota at 9 just because I feel like Standy might actually make them very, very good. But I will say London is actually on the uptick. They did win their match and they destroyed LAG, so you could put them ahead of LAG. I will say LAG's been better on the year so far though. But at this weekend we see London get some more wins. LAG struggles. London is certainly going to jump up. The only thing is I just don't want to overreact and move them above 12 simply because they won one match. But I certainly can see you maybe putting them ahead of LAG since they beat them. But it's tough to put LAG in the dead last spot since they won a match in winners. I mean, they were in winners semifinal in the last major, so it's kind of hard to just like drop them to 12. But London's at 12, but they're not like buried at 12 like they used to be. They're actually like maybe could jump a couple teams. Then I said I got Toronto at 11. The team I just think needs another roster change. Until then, I just think they're going to be bottom of the pack. LAG's 10 for me because once again, they can beat any team. We saw them 3-0 LA Thieves, but I mean, they're just such a low ceiling. They can lose to anyone, as we saw by them getting destroyed by London. 9, I've got Minnesota. This might be shocking that they're this low and not ahead of Seattle and stuff. But the reason I have them ahead of all those teams below them and only have them at 9 is because, I mean, they've been getting dominated. I don't know if Standy instantly makes them better than the worst hardpoint team, but I've heard he's so talented, and I know he is talented. And I do think Minnesota, by the end of next weekend, could jump all the way up to like the 6th spot because I do think they could get a lot better with Standy because the roles make a lot more sense. But for now, I've got to keep them down at 9. Then at 8, we got Surge. This is probably like the highest the Surge have been like almost ever, besides like maybe preseason power rankings last year before Modern Warfare. But honestly, I mean, they beat Florida pretty handily, and then they almost reverse sweep Dallas. It came down to one round to Search and Destroy in map 5. And Seattle looked super good. I'm super impressed by them. I have them at 8 because I truly think that they could jump Florida maybe and get to that 7th spot. They showed some life. And now, obviously, I hope it wasn't just a one-week fluke, but Prestinni looked a lot better and Looney looked really good. I mean, everybody in that team looked really good, and it was good to see Prestinni and Looney play good. I hope they prove me wrong and hold their roster spot and keep moving up. Then at 7, I've got Florida. I feel like from here on out, it's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, Florida, they get destroyed by Seattle, and then they destroy Minnesota. So, like, they lose to a team that they maybe shouldn't, and then they beat the team they should. It's just like they're just middle of the pack right now. And then Paris is at 6. This is probably the highest Paris has ever been, too. Once again, like when you compare them to the other teams that could have gotten their spot, I would say Florida could have gotten their spot. I would say they're certainly ahead of Seattle, but Florida and Paris could be flip-flopped at 6 and 7. The reason I take Paris over Florida, though, is because right now I just feel like Paris just has a higher ceiling. There's something about, like, when I see Paris on playing Faze, I'll believe that Paris has a slight chance to upset them because they played them super tough the first time they played. But if I see Paris versus Faze, I'm going to be thinking, you know what? Paris has a slight chance to take them out. And obviously not a high one. I'd still pick Faze, but they have a slight chance. And if I see Faze versus Florida, I'm like 100% confident that Faze is going to beat them. So that's why I have Paris at 6. Then at 5, we've got LA Thieves. Once again, they looked pretty good this week. They beat Toronto in a really sloppy match. They didn't play those maps all that well, and they should have beat New York. They're up 2-0, and then they get reverse swept. But I believe that Venom is actually going to help them on the roster change because I believe it gives them more of like a clear, defined entry sub, and I think TJ could be good in the flex, and I think LA Thieves, if nothing else, will be as good as they were, which is like kind of the upper middle of the pack, so I have them at 5. And then New York's at 4. Also not shocking here. They looked super awesome this week. They obviously lose to Faze, but they played some of the maps decently tight despite not playing that well, like I said earlier. And overall, they looked pretty good. Awesome composure to reverse sweep LA Thieves. Then at 3, this one might be a little bit of a shock, but I've got Dallas Empire. The one match we saw them play, they could have gotten beat by Seattle, who we would view as one of the worst teams. So I got to put Dallas below Chicago because we saw Chicago handle Paris relatively easy, and Paris, as I say, I believe is a very good team.
I think Chicago right now, their talent is firing all cylinders. Illey and shottzyy are not playing all that well. Crim's playing okay for his standards, and huke is obviously playing out of his mind. But I think Scump is playing very well right now. I think Dashy is playing very well right now. Formal seemed to be playing better this week, and Envoy is playing really well. I just feel like overall the Chicago players are playing better right now than Dallas, so I've got them ahead of them. And then obviously, no doubt, the easiest place to put anyone, Faze is at 1. I mean, this doesn't, if you don't have Faze at your number 1 spot in the power rankings, I don't know what you're doing. They are thoroughly dominating every team. There's never, I mean, I can't even think of a year besides like maybe Black Ops 3 Optic or AW Optic where there's like no, like it is so clear cut who the best team is. There's not even a debate. It's Faze right now, so they're at 1. That's going to do it for this little first section of the podcast, though. This went long. This is like a 40-minute one so far. So now we're just going to get into the predictions for this next upcoming event. So I'm going to do a little cut here, and then we'll get into the predictions, and that's probably going to do it for the episode. So I'll see you in a second with the predictions. All right, so here we have the predictions part. Hopefully that was a relatively smooth transition here. Here you can see what I was talking about earlier, the Toronto home series. I got 26 points. I got like all matches correct except for this Florida, Minnesota, which I should have picked right. This Florida Surge one, I was never picking Surge there, so that one I was getting wrong, but I got like a lot of the map counts right and stuff here. But yeah, that was last week's. Then week 2 here, got our matches pulled up. Kind of, I would say, a somewhat difficult week to predict overall, but a lot of the matches I feel like I know where I'm going. That Paris-Seattle Surge one is really eyeing me up, though I don't know where I want to go with that. But here are the matches for this week. I don't want to make this take too long because that first part of the video went, honestly, a lot longer than I thought it was going to. That went like 40 minutes long talking about the reactions from the weekend and the roster changes and stuff. But I feel like a lot of you guys seem to say that you kind of like the longer videos at times. Obviously, if you don't, let me know if you'd like me to cut it down stuff. But I get on rants and I just love talking about this stuff so much that I go kind of long sometimes. But a lot of you seem to say that you don't mind the longer videos. So let me know about that in the comments if you made it to this point in the video. Shout out you. I love you. You've been listening for over 40 minutes. So yeah, if you made it to this point in the video, let me know. Drop a little, like, I don't know, include something in your comment like, hey, I made it. Just say, hey, I made it at the beginning of your comment or something if you made it this far. Then I know you're a real one. You made it this far into the video. But if you want me to cut down the videos and be more concise with things, let me know. I mean, I just ramble on because I love talking about it. And some of you I know like the longer episodes. I know when I listen to podcasts, like when I listen to the Best of 3, my favorite COD podcasts, with like Salvation's Elite and those guys, and it's only an hour long, I get sad. I wish it was 2 hours long because I could just listen to it all day. But we'll get into the predictions here. We won't make you stay too long. I don't really want to make this that much over an hour if possible. But the first match of the weekend is a good one, actually. You wouldn't think it would be, but it's a good one. It's Dallas Empire versus Paris Legion. I believe that Dallas will win this match, but I really want to pick Paris for the bowl prediction because you know how I feel about. I'm really high on Paris. I think they're a good team. I'm going to pick Dallas, but I think this is a 3-2 waiting to happen. The only reason I kind of thought Paris was because we saw Surge play Dallas so tight that like you would think that that means that Dallas is kind of on the downfall, but it could have just been a bad day for Dallas in the new meta and everything. Screw it. I'm going 3-2 Paris. I know that sounds weird, and that's a really weird and really bold prediction to make. But Dallas has got to lose at some point, I believe. I think they're probably going to lose to Optic later in this stage. But I'm going to go 3-2 Paris. It's super bold. Obviously, Dallas, if you're picking, your life depends on it, you're betting, pick Dallas. Please don't listen to me and pick Paris. But I'm just really, really, really confident in Paris. I think they looked so good last week. I know they struggled against Optic and everything, and they're probably going to lose. They're probably going to lose this match. But you know what? Screw it. We're like 2 points behind the leader. We're going to go bold. I'm going to go with Paris in this one. I do think Dallas is going to win it, probably, most likely. But we got to have some fun sometimes and go with some bold predictions. And we're going to go hot bold prediction on the first one. Dallas is probably going to win this. Like I said, don't start roasting me in the comments for like being a Dallas hater, because I'm certainly not a Dallas hater. If you want to roast me for saying I like Paris too much, do that, because that's probably true. For some reason, Paris just has my heart. Maybe it's because I've been to Paris before and I loved it. It's like my favorite place on earth, but I don't know. Something about their team. I just always like Classic. I like Scraps. I like Aqua. My cousin that I watch COD with a lot, he goes to the same college as me now. He's like a huge Paris fan because Aqua's his favorite player. So like maybe that's in my heart for some reason. But I'm going Paris 3-2 in this one. Honestly, I'm throwing logic out the window. I just have a weird feeling about it. And I'm kind of just like a delusional confidence in Paris. Call me Shady Nero. I'm going to go with the next match here, though. We're going to go Minnesota versus Chicago. I picked Toronto to lose 3-2 to LA Thieves off the roster change because I feel like roster changes in general make teams more fired up and generally make them play better. But I'm not going to go so crazy and pick against Optic. I think this is going to be a 3-1 Optic. I could see 3-2, though, and like I said, more than any time this year, I could see Minnesota beating Optic. Simply because when teams make roster changes, like I said, they seem to do better, and I feel like Standy fits the team better than Major Maniac did if you're going to drop Major Maniac. The roles make more sense now. I feel like Minnesota does probably get better from that roster change, but not enough to just say they're going to beat Optic. So I'm going to go 3-1, but once again, if Minnesota was to beat Optic at any point this year, this is probably the most likely it's ever been, just because it's a new team and stuff, so Optic also has like less scouting report on what Standy likes to do unless they go back and watch like Challenger VOD, but still it's not with the same team, so it's a little different. But I'm going to go with Optic 3-1 here. Then the next match, we got Thieves versus Ravens. This should be an easy one to predict, but Thieves has a new roster. Ravens looked good. But nonetheless, I think it is probably going to be, I'll give Ravens a map. I think it's going to be 3-1. I think they are better now with Paul X and stuff. But I do think LA Thieves is better. I think they're also going to get better from their roster change. And I think they're going to be able to handle London 3-1 here. And then in the next one, we've got New York versus LAG. This is a 3-0. I'm going to go 3-0. I think this Friday day of matches might not be all that great. But we go New York 3-0 here because, like I said, I have a very hard time ever picking LAG. I know I talked about that with Kyle in the comments at one point. It's like he put LAG like super high. I think he put him up at like 5. It was like 4 or 5 or 6 somewhere in there. He put him like pretty high up there. But I just can't put LAG up there. It's just like, I don't know. There's just something about their team. It's like, yeah, could they win any match they play? Yeah, probably. We saw them beat LA Thieves in the major and stuff. But like, do I have confidence in them to win any match? No. Kind of like when they win a match, it's like, oh, okay, LAG won a match. Like, I never like go into a match thinking like, maybe unless they're playing like Seattle before, but now Seattle looks better. I'm picking Seattle over them. Like, unless they go into a match right now with like maybe London, and even then, I picked London over them and they got 3-0. So it's like, who can I pick them against that I feel confident? And the answer is nobody right now. So I can't pick LAG, and I think New York is a top 4 team right now, probably 4th, and I think they beat LAG pretty handily. And then coming in on Saturday, we got New York again versus London. Another pretty easy match for New York. I think this one is going to be a 3-2-1. I was going to go 3-0, but I'm going to give London a map. I think New York comes out hot, improves to 3-1 on the stage, and then they've got their match against Optic left, I believe. They should have a match. Or no, they're in Faze's side. So they should have their match versus, I don't know, I'm not even going to try to go through it, but they'll have one match left, but it's not against Faze, it's not against LA Thieves. So they'll honestly be pretty set because they should be playing one of the easier teams. I don't even know who they have left. Do they have Florida left, maybe? I can't even remember. No, they don't have Florida. What the heck am I saying? I don't know who they have left. Probably Toronto or something? I don't freaking know what I'm saying. Anyways, but they played LA Thieves and Atlanta already, so I mean they got their two tough teams in their group out of the way, and then they get kind of a cakewalk this week. To be honest, LAG and London are probably the 2 worst teams in the league potentially talent-wise. So they get kind of a cakewalk this week. I think they take out London 3-1, improve to 3-1 on the stage. I could see London potentially winning one of their matches if they come out hot like they did against LAG. Considering that LA Thieves is a new team, they could maybe come out and punch them in the mouth and beat them. I really don't see a way they beat New York unless New York just comes out flat and London is just maybe way better. And maybe Paul X is like the absolute god. That's the only way I see them beating New York. But I mean, it's tough. I know London wins a match last week. They're 1-0. London fans probably feeling confident, but London got a pretty brutal draw this week having to play LA and New York. I mean, even if they win one, it's tough to win both those because those are 2 very good teams. That's a brutal week, but I do think New York wins that one. I would say 3-0, but I'm going to go 3-1. And then the next match, we've got Faze versus LA Thieves. I mean, I'm not going to pick against Faze until I see them show some weakness, so I'm definitely going 3 maps for Faze here. And I think I'm going to go 1 map for the... do I want to go 1 map for the Thieves? Yeah, I think I'm going to go 1 map for the Thieves. I'm going to keep that there. I think that clearly Atlanta is the better team. I do think LA Thieves can compete with them. I think maybe they take a search or something. I kind of want to give LA Thieves 2 maps because I swear whenever you get that new team, you're just so much more energetic, and that new player seems to fry, and like the other team doesn't have as much scouting on you. So you usually seem to play better, but I'm only going to give LA Thieves 1 map here just because Atlanta is clearly the better team. It's hard to pick against them. To sum it up, pretty much, I'm not going to pick against Atlanta until I see them show weakness, and probably not going to pick against them unless they're playing like Dallas or Optic at this point. Like, I'm not going to pick a team that's not Dallas or Optic to beat Atlanta. And then the last match of that day, we got Toronto Ultra versus the LAG. This is a weird one too because, like I said, I'm very low on both these teams right now, but I like refuse to ever pick in favor of LAG. I'm going Toronto 3-0. I do want to give them a map, but if I pick a 3-1, that means I'm picking a 3-1 in like every single series because it's the easy way to go. So I got to go bold on some of them. I'm going to go 3-0 Toronto. I do think Toronto's more talented. I can see a world where LAG could win this series. I mean, I know that sounds weird since I picked Toronto 3-0, but in terms of points, I got to go 3-0 at some point. I can't go 3-1 with every series because that's not going to happen every series. But I will say the one way I see LAG winning this series is based on the fact that Toronto, like I said, without methods, seems to be a lot less structured of a team. I don't believe they have a true IGL. And if there's one thing that LAG is very good at, it's structure. I mean, they're a veteran team with assault and illey and apathy, and even Vivid seems like a pretty smart player. They're a very, very structured team. So if they're able to use that structure and like organization to really like methodically play maps, they could get Toronto off guard. And be able to win like the opening hardpoint just off pure rotations and like clean holds and stuff and clean setups. They could potentially beat Toronto. Although at the same time with Kleenex, Cammy, and Insight, I can see Toronto just overwhelming them with talent and gunning them. Basically the way I see LAG winning this series potentially, despite the fact that I have Toronto 3-0, I can see LAG winning it. And like I said, the way I see them winning it is Apathy and Vivid have their guns hot. And probably Silly has his gun hot. If those 3 can have their guns hot and they're playing very correctly and very sound, I can see them winning it. But I'm going to go Toronto 3-0 because I just feel like overall, I don't think that Apathy, Vivid, and Silly will all have their guns hot on the same day, and I just think that it's more than likely that Toronto comes out and just outclasses them in talent-wise. Then on Sunday, we've got Paris versus Seattle. This is an interesting one as well because if this was last week before we saw the matches, I'd say Paris 3-0, 3-1, something like that. But now this is like, honestly, this might be the most, I mean, I'm excited. If I look at the matches, like the first day, I'm super excited for Paris Empire. I'm excited for the Optic Minnesota one because it's interesting to see how Minnesota is going to look. That Friday, those matches don't intrigue me. And then Saturday, honestly, the only match I'm somewhat interested in is Faze, Thieves. But Sunday, I'm very, very interested to see the Paris versus Surge match because, I mean, Paris has looked super good. I'm very high on them, like you all know. And then when you look at Surge, they looked extremely good last week. They got a win over Florida, and they should have even beat Dallas potentially. So it's hard to pick against them, but I'm going to. I'm going to go with the Paris Legion 3-2. And the reason I am like actually very much not confident in this is because Surge looked a lot better, and Surge has actually looked very good in Search and Destroy. But Paris has kind of struggled in Search at sometimes. So if it goes to a map 5, I almost feel more confident in Surge, but with that said, I'm going to be stupid and go with Paris because I just have that delusional confidence in Paris for some reason. Like I said, though, this match is probably one of the most toss-ups of the week. I honestly think it might be the match I'm most excited to watch. Now I say this, and all of a sudden Surge will come back to earth and they'll suck again, and Paris will 3-0 them or something, and I'll be really disappointed. But I am very excited to watch that match because I think it has a lot of potential. I'm going Paris 3-2, but I could see it going either way. I think that's a match to watch this weekend, especially if Surge is on the upswing like we think they are. The only thing that kind of sucks about it is, I mean, Surge doesn't play a match. I'm looking here. Surge doesn't even play a match until that Sunday, so that kind of sucks because we won't really get a sample size of them. We'll see how Paris looks Thursday against Dallas, but we haven't seen Surge since last week since they don't play on only on Sunday. Then the next match is another interesting one because it's Dallas and Minnesota. Usually, once again, you'd say this is a domination from Dallas, but the one time we saw them play early this year, Minnesota beat them. Obviously, the roster change comes through, so it's tough to predict because we don't exactly know what Minnesota is going to look like. But to be safe, and since I already picked Dallas to lose, I don't think if Dallas loses to Paris, there's no way they're losing to Minnesota. I mean, in all honesty, Dallas is probably going to beat Paris, and then they'll probably beat Minnesota. But if I had them losing to Paris, I got to pick them to beat Minnesota. I think it'll be a 3-2 though. And the reason I go 3-2 is because I do believe that Minnesota with Standy is going to be really pesky, and I don't think Dallas is in their top form right now. Like I said, teams that have new players always seem to do better. I really have a feeling that there's no way. I don't know. I just have a feeling that Minnesota is going to come out of this week with one win because they have a new roster, but their matches are against Optic and Dallas, so I just can't pick them to beat either one. But I won't be surprised if Minnesota comes out of this week with a win, although I have to play it safe since I've already played it kind of risky on my picks. I'm going to go with Dallas in this one. I mean, they are the better team. They're probably the team you should pick. I'm going to go with them 3-2. Then the last match of the weekend, we've got Optic versus Florida. This is an interesting one because if you know anything about your CDL history, since the CDL started, we're not talking CWL, just CDL since that started last year in Modern Warfare, Florida's kind of had Optic's number. Or not Optic, I guess Chicago Huntsmen / Optic Chicago. Florida has had their number, so it's kind of tough to actually pick Optic since of that history, but I'm still going to do so because Florida is just so on and off. Did Florida have a match earlier? I don't believe so. But I'm gonna go with Optic here. I want to say a 3-0 Optic, but I'm gonna give Florida a map. Although I picked 3-2 in the other two, so I feel like it might be a potential 3-0 since usually if you see back-to-back 3-2s or 3-1s, and some 3-0 seems to happen every day. By rule of thumb, I should just pick a 3-0 every day since it seems to happen. But I'm not going to. I'm going to continue and just say, you know what, screw it. Optic's going to win this one 3-1. I feel relatively confident in this one because Optic seems to be this year on point. They haven't really had one of those like dud matches yet. I mean, I guess you could consider that New York match in the major kind of a dud match, but I mean, New York is a very good team, so it's like I don't really usually if a team gets 3-0'd by another really really good team, I don't consider it as much of a dud match because sometimes when two very good teams play, one's just gonna be more on point that day, and that's what New York was. They were just more on point that day, and they're a very good team. But I think Optic's just a lot more talented than Florida. Florida is too inconsistent this year to say that they're going to consistently put together 3 maps where they beat Optic, so I'm going to go Optic 3-1. And there are our predictions for the second week of Stage 2. And this video's already gone on far long enough. It's going to be like our longest video ever, maybe like just under an hour, I think. So that is going to do it for this one. Be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed. Obviously, comment down below. Like I said, comment if you made it to that point that I said. Like, let me know that you made it because then you're an OG. I love you. You made it that far into the video. You stuck around with me that long. But yeah, subscribe also if you're new and you enjoyed. I see like in our statistics, like over 60% of you that watch or listen to the podcast aren't subscribed, and we're trying to keep growing. And just trying to keep growing our community. So let's if you're new and you enjoyed, I would please ask you to subscribe so we can get to the road to 300 subscribers. The support on the channel has been awesome lately, though. We've been getting a lot more new commenters, like I said, and I'd love to see that. The more people we've got to talk to and kind of build our own little community here, the better. And maybe we can do like a draft royale type thing like we see some other people. We did a fantasy league this year with some people, with some listeners, but maybe next year we could do a whole draft royale community or something. That's kind of like the goal, is just to have a bigger and bigger community to talk to. But that's going to do it for this one. I really hope you guys enjoyed this longer episode. Like I said, let me know if you like the little bit of longer episodes. I can get into more topics then instead of just doing the typical match reactions, news, power rankings. I can maybe add some random other segments in each week if you guys enjoy the longer duration of the podcast. But that is going to do it. Like I said, please be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed. I hope you guys enjoy watching the matches this weekend. I know I'm looking forward to it. I may actually have, I've been so busy, I've been usually catching matches after the fact, after I already know what happened, which isn't as fun. It's more fun to watch it when you don't know what's going to happen. So hopefully this weekend I'll be able to catch more, especially that Sunday match. I really want to watch that Paris Surge match. But hopefully I'll be able to catch more this weekend, kind of live. I hope you guys enjoy watching them. Like I said, that's going to do it. This has been Ryan with the CDL Podcast. I will see you guys in the next one. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks for watching.